President Trump is improvising the Iran endgame in real time. This improvisation, I find it super interesting, but what does it mean for you in the global economy and where this is headed? I compiled 5 to 7 nuggets to touch on. I'm gonna cover how this comes from his confidence in Venezuela, how it stems from, his intervention in South America, the economic consequences, and the timeline on Iran's internal collapse, if there is any. Before I start, just a quick pitch on what I'm trying to do here. Hope you subscribe and keep watching. Independent, authentic, and making videos just analyzing, breaking down curated topics that I find interesting to help you understand the macro events that, they affect your portfolio, job prospects, and your day-to-day economy that you are a part of, right? Like, we're all a part of this economy. Being informed is and will always be cool. And I'll also say, I'm on a mission to really try to spread curiosity among everyone, because I really believe it's the skill in the future in this AI age. In doing this by introducing new ideas that help you connect existing ideas to create new frameworks, and these gaps that prompt you to want to learn more, hence curiosity. So let's dive into what is happening in Iran. There's a lot of parallels to the Ukraine war of 2022. That's still going on to this day in terms of oil justifications, right? Like Putin, very infamously, President Vladimir Putin, he had a lot of changing in the outcomes of this war in Ukraine, right? At first it was about demilitarizing Ukraine, then it became into taking all of Ukraine, and now into taking the east of Ukraine. And so it's a very interesting thing. And for Trump, that's been one of the main criticisms that he has been hammered with, of what is the end game here in Iran? Like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to have regime change? Are we trying to just prevent nuclear weapons? Was it because Israel was about to attack first? What is, and that hasn't, that communication hasn't been super clear. This stems from the success that Trump had in Venezuela. And to give President Trump credit, there was success in Venezuela, right? Like, there was this article by the New York Times, how people are returning to nightlife in Caracas, Venezuela. And so, same way President Putin was kind of very confident after in 2014 he was able to take Crimea, the province in the Black Sea, from Ukraine, annex it, to President Obama's not happiness, right? Like, he was not happy about it at all, but he was still able to do it, and he thought because of that, well, if no one stopped me then, no one's going to stop me when I try to take the east of Ukraine, or maybe all of Ukraine. But it has been much harder for him. It's kind of a little similar logic with Trump, that he thought he could do something similar with Venezuela in Iran, but they're different places, right? And Venezuela is like level 1, Iran's like level 30, and China's like level 60, right? So the risk and the scale of this compared to Venezuela is like 50 times. The way it happened was super interesting. The Israeli Secret Service, the Israeli intelligence, Mossad, being really integrated, evidently so, in the Iranian government, that they knew when there was going to be basically a high-profile meeting of the Ayatollah, Iran's leader who was killed a week ago, and his senior advisors, and they knew about it, and that was kind of the logic. So I want to touch a little bit on the logic of why the strike even happened. And what happened is that Israeli intelligence confirmed with U.S. intelligence that basically there was this opportunity to strike in the middle of the day, right? Like, not at night. These attacks usually happen at night. Strike in the middle of the day and kill the Ayatollah and some of his senior advisors. And that was something that Trump could not resist. On the background of all of this, right, Iran was building a nuclear weapon. Now, that's a bit up to debate if it was how fast that was going, but the intelligence suggests that even after Israel and the U.S. struck in the summer of 2025, the summer of 2025, they were still trying to kind of rebuild the nuclear weapon, which was something that the U.S. could not accept, because that's what happened with North Korea, right? They did not invade North Korea, and now North Korea has so much leverage over everyone, basically, because they have a nuclear weapon, and they could not accept that for Iran. A bit of the problem here is that while there's been reporting that Iran has been trying to kind of move past it and try to rebuild their nuclear program after the strikes of 2025. It's not like they were about to do it. And so that's a little bit of why people are confused as to why he struck now. I think it's much more of like he saw an opportunity and he took it. And I think the logic was like, whatever replaces this, it's gonna be like, it can't be worse than what already existed. But what remains is the very, very big risks of doing something like this. And the other thing is like Trump's really thinking about his legacy, right? Like he's publicly said he wants to visit Caracas, Havana, and Tehran, which, by the way, I'm planning to make another video on this, but if I was Cuba, I would be very, very scared of trying to make it, the current government until 2027. But he really sees himself as trying to create a legacy and also want to establish that like Iran's regime, the Ayatollah's regime, was like very, very bad, right? Like these are the people behind Hamas, they are the people behind Hezbollah, behind the attack on Israel in 2023, behind the Houthis in Israel. And so it's a good thing that there's change. Like there needs to be change. Now, does that justify the risk? Maybe, maybe not, right? And that's kind of one of the big debate that you're seeing in Washington at the moment. So let's talk a little bit about the risk. But I also want to also point out that like the Iranian people are really happy about this. You see Persian Americans in LA, which was probably the biggest Persian American community in North America, or the Americas for that matter. Massive celebrations, the same celebrations you saw, in Houston and Miami after Maduro was captured. So, it's not a terrible thing, but the risks are very huge. So, one of the very interesting responses from Iran, from their strategy, was striking the Gulf, right? Striking Dubai, striking Qatar, where it really hurts them. Because if you think of Dubai, their economy is sort of this expat economy, right? Yes, they have oil, they have a lot of things, but eventually the oil is going to run out. And their bet, and it's the same logic in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, is to try to transport it into this like modern economy that it's going to be really hard. Like it's going to take years to regain trust. Tourism is going to drop in Dubai because Iran struck Dubai. There's also, the gas prices. Like President Biden suffered so much in the election. It's one of the reasons Trump got elected in 2024 because of the rise in gas prices from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, right? Like it didn't even recover by 2024. They've come down by this time, by 2026. But, there is risk in that depending on how this goes. And it's also very interesting, right? Because, we try to be very objective here of calling out good things when it's good, bad things when it's bad. This is one of the bad things Trump has done. It's very ironic, in my opinion, that this war is costing like $1 billion a day, right? Eliminating so much of what Doge and Elon Musk try to cut. So, it's just very ironic, right? Like, they cut health insurance, they cut USAID. There have been reports by the New York Times, I'll link them in the description, of people literally dying because of like the cuts of USAID. People dying in northern Cameroon, in South Sudan, in Madagascar. And now all this money is being spent in missiles and everything. So that's also something to keep in mind. And the other risk is that like Iran's using, in fact, a lot of the drones that Russia was using against Ukraine came from Iran, or it's part of the same technology. And so there's a risk of that, because if you've seen the Ukraine war, part of why it's been such a prolonged conflict is this sort of drone warfare that like drones, you can keep sending like kamikaze drones to all these different countries, to Saudi Arabia or to US allies or to Israel, and kind of keep like US troops in there for a very, very long time, which is the very big fear, right? Like how long will the US be in this conflict? Let's talk a little bit about what's going on inside Iran. So obviously there were very huge protests in January, and these protests began in the historically loyal to the Ayatollah's regime, the Bazaar, right? It was the merchants. So that's kind of where there's like the sentiment, because there's sort of two people in Iran, like two types of people, two personas in Iran. The older people who, they're kind of split, some support the regime, some don't, and the younger people who by and large do not like the regime. There's so many interesting pieces and works of arts and videos and movies about the young people of Tehran. Like Persian people are like the shit, right? And they really dislike this regime. So it's not like you know, that like people see this as a good thing in Iran by and large, right? Because this was a very brutal regime, killed so many people in the January protests, and you can look at my earlier video on that. It's really hard. Like, the best case would be that there's someone like Gorbachev was for the Soviet Union, or Deng Xiaoping for China, someone that reforms Iran into the huge potential that Iran has. And by the way, I think changing the name from Iran to Persia would be an awesome thing, right? Like, imagine the Republic of Persia. Like, that sounds really awesome. But, you know, like, I think something like that would be the worst case scenario, is that this becomes something like Myanmar, like a dictatorship. Because at the end of the day, at this moment, who has the guns is the IRGC, I think it's called, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They still have the guns. So I find it hard that someone's going to stand up when they have the guns, and the fear is that a general, someone takes power, and it becomes like a dictatorship, like a military dictatorship, like you see in Myanmar. And things have been very, very bad for Myanmar, like a brutal civil war. That's the worst case scenario for this. But, you know, it could also be something like, you know, knowing Trump and sort of his tendencies, he could very well by like next weekend be like, okay, mission successful, we're retreating, leaving a mess. But, you know, and that's where you got to make your own judgment of was this worth the effort? Is it things better than what was before with the Ayatollah? And he could easily start speaking about Iran in the past tense, like he does about Venezuela, right? Like, he refers now to Venezuela, like what we did in Venezuela, or success in Venezuela, right? Like in the past tense. A few other things, and I know I'm a bit over time, I try to keep it at 10 minutes, but this is such a huge topic, right? It's the biggest after Venezuela, so there's a lot of change going on in international relations. But I would just call out how Vance has been JD Vance, Vice President from Ohio, has been really embarrassed by this, right? I mean, like, he was someone who campaigned explicitly when he was campaigning, or when he was a U.S. Senator, about really, I mean, he served in Iraq, right? And really being against the sort of Middle East, Central Asia, like Afghanistan, prolonged wars. And now he's that obviously was not the case, right? And the sort of more Marco Rubio wing of the Republican Party, who is more interventionist, is going. And who's getting all the attention? It's Marco Rubio, right? Like, they're just reporting, very interesting reporting, that JD Vance did not even get invited to like Mar-a-Lago, which has sort of become this like second White House in Florida. They didn't get invited to Mar-a-Lago to like plan the operations or in the Situation Room. And that's also very interesting. There's this video circulating around how like Donald Rumsfeld, who was the Secretary of Defense in George W. Bush's term when they invaded Iraq, interesting video that he says like, no, this should last 6 days, maybe 6 weeks, and that ended up taking 9 years. And there's a video of Pete Hegseth saying basically the exact same thing. So the risk is definitely there. This is a huge risk Trump took. Really, really huge risk, right? Because if you compare this to the Iraq War, like the Iraq War left so many consequences, from like the rise of ISIS, the Syrian civil war, refugee crisis in Europe, terrorist attacks in Europe, jihads in the French Sahel in North Africa, in like the northern region of the Sahara in Africa. And that's a risk, right? And, you know, like, it's very interesting in that way. And the final thing I'll say is like, the U.S. military basically lost to the Houthis in that it thought it was going to be like a quick operation in Yemen, and it had to basically very subtly pull away. But there's risk that there's new methods of Middle East warfare involving drones, involving sort of more cyber attacks, involving a lot of the techniques that the Houthis used, that it might not be this quick operation. And that's the risk, right? And if it doesn't go as planned, if, you know, the economy worsens because of this, if oil prices rise, I mean, oil prices is something that like people here where I live in the Midwest, that they're going to feel it, right? If you see boots in the ground, like, I think that's going to be too much for even MAGA, and it could totally obliterate any chances the Republican Party wants of holding on to power in the midterms. And it could be like, this very well could be the end of Donald Trump's presidency, or it could be a transformative moment, right? So it's such like, I'm telling you guys, this is such an interesting event. This is not the normal course of events that happens, and I will keep a very sharp eye, and I'll be covering it a lot. But yeah, I know I've talked a lot. I can, like, you know, ramble on a little bit, but it's a very interesting topic. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope it was insightful.